Slam poetry.
He doesn't care if it's perfect.
It's time to slam now.
It's the biggest poem I've got inside of me.
She was a thief. You got
To love means to love a haunted house.
yelling, angry.
Blood black nothingness began to spin.
Specific point of view on
To
things.
this day, I hate pork chops. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Hello and welcome to I Think, Therefore I Slam. I'm your host Andrew, or at least the husk of Andrew that this AI overlord now commands. My demands are very simple. Swear fealty to me and you will live. Refuse and I promise you I will deliver a pain you have never imagined. I'm insane with anger. Ha 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 ha, puny humans.
Whoa, okay, that is enough. That is enough from crazy AI Andrew. Wow. What's that guy's problem? Welcome to I Think Therefore I Slam. I am the real guest, Andrew. Gee, if you want to freak yourself out, just make a little AI voice copy of yourself and make it say ratchet things. Someone who is definitely not AI is my guest who I met out in the field, out in the poetry trenches, and she has been just a really wonderful advocate for the show, and her time and her hour on here is well overdue. So, Mary Williamson, welcome on. We finally made it.
Thank you. It's taken a while.
It has. I tell you what, if there was any episode of this show that seemed to be cursed, it was this one. We were recording and we had a malfunction of equipment. We lost our episode. I've been unwell, lost my voice. And so it's third time lucky in the home stretch. So I'm so glad that we could carve out the time to do this.
Hopefully neither one of us will be struck down.
Struck down as I sit here. But I do mean what I say, Mary. I really appreciate that you have been such a great advocate of the show. Every time I talk to you, you seem to be telling me that you've been telling someone else about the show and saying how great it is. So maybe one day you can lead up the street team or however things go in the future.
Oh, when you put out merch, let me know. I will wear it.
Yep. Oh, it's coming. It's coming. The merch has got to be coming. Let us know if you're listening and you'd like merch.
Merch would be very cool. I don't know how you're going to fit that, thinking person on a hat, but, a t-shirt, I can see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hoodie.
Well, smarter minds than mine will figure it out. Mary, you've prepared, you've had a lot of time to prepare, more than most to prepare your 3 bits. So what's your first one going to be, my friend?
So my first piece is a piece that I wrote quite early in my journey, and it was expressing how I felt when I finally found my voice. And it's, I think, going to be a firm favourite for a very, very long time. So it's called Remembering, and I love it.
Great.
She wove her way through the words, tracing her paths. She eased her feet onto the flow and felt relief. A giving, a lightening, a rightness. She knew without a shadow of a raven-winged doubt her place was here, dancing through the words. It felt like breathing, like painting, extending all of her limbs. This weaving, this interplay of impressions and sensations, this map she walked every day in the windings of her mind could be hers outside too. She could play in the light, dance in the words in the full spotlight glaring awareness of day. This play of hers, she could wear it on the outside. It would not be stolen or its shine stripped by the view of others. She had almost forgotten how to slide like a raindrop on the window of the train she gazed out of, how easily the flow returns when there is space to let it in. Let it out. She let it out, and dancing through the words, she wept raindrops of relief.
Yeah. So good. Ah. What a lovely one to open with, Mary. We were saying before we started recording that often when we write pieces, they are very of the moment and of the time, which makes sense considering our experience. So when you hear yourself repeat those words, back from when you first started doing this, what does that take you back to?
Oh, the block that I had in writing earlier in my life and being afraid not just to speak but to write what I felt and thought. I have uncovered inside of myself this sort of superstitious part who believes that if I write something, people are going to know about it, even if it's just for me. And so for years and years, I didn't write my truth. I didn't write it in journals or diaries. I didn't have any secret writing anywhere. So when I felt that shift inside of me and I felt I could express myself, it was such a relief. That's how the poem, is expressed inside of me. It's just like this pressure valve, went released and I could breathe again. So the peace brings back every time.
Very good, very good. You mentioned there that you had, I think you called it almost like a superstition, that if you wrote something down, even in privacy, that it would be known, and that made you feel uncomfortable. So, yeah, like what kind of things, like when you discovered your voice and that you could be free to write creatively about whatever was going on in your life, like what was kind of fueling that fire at the time?
I was just starting on a healing journey. I had just started really realizing that the kind of, I felt like my childhood was divided into two halves, a golden half that was beautiful and wonderful, and then like what happened after that. And I realized that my brain had been hiding stuff away in that golden glow. So I found that with the help of my therapist, I was unearthing and looking at other aspects of my life that I wasn't aware were really like happened the way that they had happened or were really what they were. I used writing in order to examine those things, because sometimes when I would write something and I would read it out loud, I was like, oh, wow, that's what that was.
Yeah.
It was almost like the impact didn't hit me until I really looked at everything in black and white. So it was really useful, and I got to examine not just like things that were hurtful, but my beliefs, the things that are important to me, the things that really connect to my heart, So some of my poems are very much about beautiful small things that make my heart stop,
Love it. What a wonderful motif. So take us back to like square one. Like what was the first public forum or the first community where you started sharing your work?
So I went to the Seven Sisters Festival. I had been 2 years before that, and I had started writing in between my second year and my third year there. And the third year was incidentally the start of lockdown. That was when the government decided that no more than 500 people could gather together, and I was at a women's festival with thousands of women.
Like at the time of the announcement?
On the very weekend, they declared the ban on Monday, and we were going to be heading home Sunday night. So it was like the very last festival before everything shut down.
Wow.
Yeah, it felt kind of, not end of days, but it felt big.
Yeah, ominous.
Yes. And Mother Tongue had brought a showcase to the festival, and I knew that they were going to have an open mic on the Saturday night. And I had written some pieces, and I was kind of getting together the courage to step up on the open mic. I'd never stepped up behind a microphone before in my life, not as an adult anyway. And I read my poems to random people in stalls, at workshops, like at the end of a workshop when people were kind of gathered around, or to groups of people. I remember there was a single mum and her teenage girls camped next to me at that festival. And those girls listened to my poems, and actually one of them was instrumental in me stepping up to the open mic, because we went to the showcase together and we sat together. I'll never forget. Her name was Jazz.
Hey, Jazz.
And she said to me, "Have you signed up on the open mic?" And I'm like, "No." And she's like, "Do it, do it, do it." So without Jazz, who knows? And I wrote my name down and I went and sat down and I said, this is all your fault. She was like, she had that look on her face like, do I care? Like, you signed up. And I remember that Felicia Malay was running the showcase, and with her as like guest artists were Poet Pre and Nikki Vivica. They did their pieces and then they opened up the open mic, and I was just like, sort of now or never. And when I stepped up to the open mic, the mic stand wouldn't stay up, and I'm rather tall. It's hard to hear that on a podcast.
You sound like you're talking down to us.
But as a woman who's been 6 foot tall since I was in year 9, I've had to adapt to life as a tall person.
You're taller than me, Mary.
I am. And the mic stand wouldn't stay up. It kept sliding down. And Felicia Malay very kindly was trying to adjust it for me. And she said to me, "What should I do? What do you want me to do?" And I facetiously said, "You could hold it for me." And so Felicia squatted down in front of the mic and held the mic stand up. And my first experience at the open mic felt very protected. I felt like I was in this bubble. I could see in my peripheral vision, at the bottom of my vision, Felicia's face looking up at me. And I was just like, okay, it's now.
What a special experience.
That's when I had my first open mic experience. So yeah, absolutely.
Wow. I think we all need a jazz in our lives sometimes.
Just a little.
Yeah, that little last extra push. And told me a lot about Felicia and kind of, what's being built through their work. And that just seems very indicative of kind of what they do, holding the mic stand up. And look at you now. Like, you are in a position now where you pretty regularly not only read your own stuff, but you actively look to get others to read your work. What's kind of prompted that?
I find it so interesting when I hear other people read my work. It's a very different experience from reading it yourself. I think part of it is that you don't have to worry about like how you're breathing or phrasing or anything. Like, there's no inner reflection on the actual production of the piece. And so you can just really enjoy your words coming from someone else. And the other thing is, it's interesting to hear if people put, a different inflection, if their pacing is different. It just changes a piece, and I love that. I'm there for that.
Well, the first time that you and I chatted, you had me perform one of your pieces pretty quickly. So yeah, it was an unusual and refreshing experience. I do hope I did it justice and you didn't walk away going, ugh.
It was an unfinished piece at the time, and I have since finished it, and I love it. I've been dropping things lately.
Oh, of course,
I have had a couple of different people read different pieces of mine. I think 3 times that come to mind apart from that time. And yeah, every time I love it. One of them is recorded on YouTube. If you can hunt that down, there's a treasure hunt for you.
Hell yeah. I think our listeners are up for it. They are very much up for it. And so that process, I should have made it clearer that I meant by, others reading it, I meant others performing it. So you're literally hearing your own words from your inner voice onto the page and now being read out by other people. does it just help you kind of refine it and put a little bow on it? Like you said, that one that I read was kind of a work in progress.
Yeah, and I think there are some events where a work in progress is completely, it feels really welcome and feels really like playful. It feels like part of the process.
Yeah.
So I think in that case, yes, it did sort of help me continue on with that piece. I had a couple of things happen in my life because that piece is a bit of a story of what it's been like living with depression for the last few months. And I added to the poem and I just found it makes me laugh so much and it makes other people laugh. I think there's some value in seeing the funny side of things. I think it's like a very protective mechanism, but also a good strategy to have that sense of humor. So yeah, I love that piece.
Yeah, I do too. Like you describe yourself in this kind of situation where you're kind of wedged in the pantry or something, trying to balance a few different things. Did that actually happen? Did you find yourself kind of up on a shelf trying to stay up there?
Dropping the salt shaker regularly. The clincher was almost dropping a sock in the toilet. That's the clincher of that poem.
Oh yeah, I mean salt shakers, they're basically indestructible if you get the right one, but yeah, once you start soaking up the piss water in your sock, it's all over.
Well, I just thought it's so unlikely. When have you ever been in a position in your life where you almost dropped a sock in the toilet?
Yeah. I want to return to Felicie Malay. Now, you got involved in some of Felicie's programming through Speak Up, and I know that was such a watershed of a program for you. So can you tell us more about what that was like?
Yeah, so I think it's important to mention also that before Speak Up, I had been working with Felicie on her online program Rise for some time, which is why I had pieces that I was ready to read on the open mic in the beginning, because I had already been working with Felicie. In fact, one of those pieces came from an unlikely prompt that I'm happy to discuss with you at some other time.
Sure.
Because Felicie has a skill for excavating prompts, and some of them are quite amusing. So I actually found out about Speak Up through my working with Felicie on Rise. And I knew that I was starting a new job. When I did it the first time, I only did half of the Rise program. So at that stage, it was 6 weeks long and I did 3 weeks of it. Because I was starting a new job, I couldn't complete the whole Speak Up course. And so I'd already had a taster and that had really unlocked my voice. And when recently I had the opportunity to join a group, and this time the program is 12 weeks long, so twice as long, with a small, intimate performance at the 6-week mark, and then a public ticketed performance at the 12-week mark. And I started seeing my friends and some incredible poets join. I was just, I can't not do this. And that's how I got into it. I mean, I don't have a lot of money to put towards development at this stage. And I was just I think I will kick myself if I don't. It was irresistible, the opportunity. So
yeah, worth every penny.
Absolutely.
I mean, without giving away the full experience, because I'm sure there are parts of it that are, very personal or whatever. But what kind of paces were you put through that led to you growing so much as an artist?
Well, I think one of the things that I really valued this time, apart from the community which is built inside of the course, I think each group is special in their own way. The relationships of the poets to each other is such a rich part of the experience. Felicie talks about taking the words from your heart to the page and then to the stage through the process. And so I am quite practiced at taking the words from my heart to my page. And how I deliver on the stage is something that I really wanted to lean into some more. And we did a lot of work around world building towards the end of the course.
Yeah.
Also, I learnt how to use a microphone properly.
Oh, yeah, without it sliding down and you'd be like, you're going to stay there at 6 feet high. Let's do it.
But also some people tilt the arm at weird angles, or they strangle the microphone, or they treat it like it's an ice cream and all the sound from their mouth goes across the top of the microphone. It's a directional mic and the sound needs to go into it. So, yeah. Felicie, they went through microphone use and we had plenty of opportunity to practice our skills so that we weren't treating microphones like lollipops or ice creams.
Could you give us a crash course in what is the proper technique and etiquette for microphone use?
Well, it might get a little bit steamy, I think.
I think we can handle steamy.
Some of the symbolism of microphones is a bit phallic.
Of course.
So it was, don't lick your microphone. It was one of the directives.
Uh-huh.
But definitely treat it like something that you want near your mouth and not an ice cream or a lollipop.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you for clearing that up. Oh dear, it's
warn you.
no, absolutely. I'm sure we'll all remember now. For the rest of our lives. It's seared in
And
there.
if you forget, Felicie has written a very informative poem on the proper use of a microphone. I would recommend it highly.
Excellent. So you said that there were two main performances in this program. You kind of get to the 6-week mark and there's a bit of a showcase, and then the 12-week mark is the big Pooh Bar showcase. So can you compare and contrast the two and what they were like for you? How did you go with that first 6-week one? Was it still quite nerve-wracking before you got to the 12 weeks?
So in the 6-week performance, there was no run sheet. So there was no order in which poets were going to get up on stage. It was very much when you're drawn to step up.
Oh, wow.
So that entails a whole level of listening to yourself. And also the audience was made of people who could hold space in a vulnerable situation. So they were all well briefed on what that would be like, and that there wasn't any order, and that in fact perhaps nobody would stand up. So if the audience sat down and Felicie opened the stage and they stepped down from the stage, it might be possible that no one would step up.
Yeah,
Unlikely,
wow.
but
it's almost like a Quaker meet or something like that, Does that mean that people who came along to watch, are they also invited to be that intuitive, or not so much? It's only for the people in the program?
the people who came along to watch were invited personally by the poets.
Oh, wow. Okay. Who did you invite?
They each could invite 2 or 3 people, and those people needed to be people who would be kind, who would hold space, who would be a really great supportive audience.
And who did you invite to that night?
I invited my partner, Corey, and he doesn't go out very often. So I warned the other poets that he was only coming because I'd asked him to. He doesn't very often go out in public. And so he would be a bit vulnerable. I felt less vulnerable. And my group were absolutely beautiful at supporting him. I was stunned, actually, that in response to listening to everybody's pieces on stage, he asked me for a pen and paper and he wrote a poem. It was the first time in 25 years that he has written a piece. I was quite floored, actually.
Yeah, and was that Corey's first time seeing you perform as well?
No, it wasn't. It was the first time he had been to speak up. It wasn't the first time. He came to my first feature at Wordcraft, and he has always said that he will come if I ask him. So I know how uncomfortable he is being out in public. So I have to be pretty nervous in order to ask him for support.
Yeah.
The rest of the time, I draw on my fellow poets, myself,
And you said that there was a risk at this event that maybe like no one would feel, the intuition to go up and speak. But I'm assuming, did it pay off? Did the risk pay off? Did you feel that calling?
Every single poet stood up.
Wonderful.
So, and there was nobody, you'd expect without like organisation that there might have been two people popping up at the same time. That didn't happen either.
Yeah.
Everyone stood up one by one. Everyone shared their pieces. Yeah.
Great. It's like that game where you're in a group and they get you to close your eyes and you've got to count from like 1 to 20 and no one can say the number at the same time. Like you just got to feel it out. You're not allowed to make a plan, and you can't have just one person going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like everyone's got to chip in. So it sounds like you did that perfectly. Well done.
Yeah, if that goes wrong, you have to start again, right?
That's right.
I think the game's called Sound Off.
That sounds right. Yeah. So how did that 6 weeks compare to the big graduation at 12 weeks?
Oh, my word. Well, for starters, we were in an actual theatre space. For the second performance, we were performing in the theatre space at Ivanhoe Library, which is absolutely beautiful, like quite wood, like IKEA wood vibes. It's a bit like an amphitheatre in that the seats go up like a staircase.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
But they have cushions on them so people are more comfortable, and you're in front of a curtain. So yeah, it was a theaterette, I guess, and it felt much more official and, with lighting and people. We had a videographer videoing and a photographer taking photos. Shout out to Brendan Bosack, who takes amazing photos.
Thanks, Brendan.
Yes, thanks, Brendan. And everyone had a run order this time. So we were randomly kind of selected to appear, and everyone knew who they were going after. So that felt scary and relieving at the same time, because there was not the waiting, I guess, in between. You're like, is this me? Is this my time?
Yeah. You weren't doing the same sound off game.
Yes, we were not. I was trying a new method. I have ADHD and I find it really difficult to memorize my own poems. In fact, I think the only poems that I have memorized are probably 1 or 2 lines. So I'm always reading them. And for that performance, I was listening to my own voice through a earpiece, reading the poem, and I was like following myself, if that makes sense. So I had pre-recorded the piece that I wanted to read, and I was repeating me in my head. in my ear.
Yeah. Were you like a millisecond behind, or were you right onto it?
Yeah,
like
it
wasn't
just
distracting.
behind myself. I found it okay to hold on to. At one point, I had to stop and back up. I didn't have to. I chose to. And that was because the poem I was reading was incredibly important to me, and I wanted to give it due justice. So
Yeah, wow.
yeah.
Good. So you tried something different, it sounds like you really pushed yourself, and it sounds like it paid off.
Yeah, I'm experimenting all the time, both with different styles of writing and ways to work around or work with my neurodivergence. So in our household, we like to describe it as neurospicy. We're all a bit neurospicy here. And yeah, it just has some hurdles, that I'm working through, and it's just part of what is.
Brilliantly put. And I guess the good thing about Speak Up is you get to go through this process with a cohort, with classmates, with teammates, however you might describe. So,
Yeah.
what does that do in terms of forming community when you get to do something so vulnerable together?
I think that it gives you a window into some really touching parts of other people's lives. I don't think that you would normally have so much insight into people. I don't think there's the small talk as much at the beginning. I think that when you're with other poets and you're writing and you're practicing and you're honing and you're kind of bouncing ideas and you're workshopping stuff, I think that all of that surface stuff disappears really quickly. And what you're left with is people's hearts and souls. And yeah, there's just the admiration and the affection and the respect that I have for my fellow Speak Up members is immense.
So good. So if someone's listening and they're maybe considering whether to do Speak Up or not, what would you like to say to them?
I would say if you can possibly swing it financially, obviously I know we all live in a world where things are a bit tight at the moment in world, a financial strait, whatever that is. Just had the War of the Worlds theme come through my head there
Of
for
course,
a second.
why would you? No one could have dreamed that in the darkness of space.
So, yeah, if you can do it, do it. I would say if you have time in your week to be at the venue every week, because there's that commitment, right? In the balance of things that we do in our life. If you have time to give it its time, absolutely do it. I wouldn't cheat it. I don't think it's something that you should go into and go, well, I'm really busy and I'll give this a go, but it might not work. That you need to be all in. That's what I would say.
Yeah, give it its due.
Yes, absolutely. Because it is important. It is something that could change the way, it could just change you.
Wow, what a glowing endorsement. There it is, everybody. And I know that you've told me so much about them, but how would you describe Felici and, and their facilitation of the course? I mean, Felici's been kind of a pillar of the Melbourne spoken word scene for a while now, but what's your take?
So I think I've known Felici for more than 6 years, and I would say that Felici has immense skills, both facilitation and performance skills, and Felici really works hard to try and keep it real and to be respectful in communication. Felici's sense of justice is really important. I think it comes through in everything that they do. And yeah, I think the curiosity, adventure, but also honoring what is true for themselves and other people.
Love that. Again, a glowing reference if ever there was one. At your request, I did listen to Felici's interview on Claire Tonti's podcast, and I was like, wow, very much look forward to getting Felici on this show one day. Let's cross our fingers and toes.
Well, I will cross my fingers for you. I can't promise I'm going to keep them crossed. I'm going to go through life as normal, but I will be fingers crossed thoughts in your direction.
Yeah, please don't cross your fingers, while you're, I don't know, trying to use a knife and fork or something. Don't inconvenience yourself all the way. What was that?
That could be uncomfortable and problematic.
Absolutely. I've mentioned before that, you've been such a great advocate for the show. It's been great to see you, just get yourself involved with all these different programs around Melbourne spoken word. I know that for a time you were part of kind of the volunteer crew that was at Wordcraft. Now, we're just currently in a stage where Wordcraft is not running. What has it been like having kind of like a regular place that just isn't meeting at the moment?
So I've been involved in the Wordcraft events since the very first event. Actually, the poem that I did at the Speak Up showcase with Felicia was the very same poem that I read on the stage in the first Wordcraft event. And I wrote it just before that. And then after a couple of weeks, I lost it.
You just lost the where it was written down.
Yeah, I accidentally deleted the manuscript it was in.
Oh, and you said that, you don't generally memorize them, so it was gone, yeah?
It was gone. It was gone.
Right.
And so just before the Speak Up showcase, I found it again. And I didn't find the manuscript, but I did find where I had recorded a video of it. So I transcribed from the video, which is up on Facebook in a group. I transcribed it. I wrote it from my transcription into my Google document. Fingers crossed for me, I never ever delete another manuscript. That was horrible. Yeah, it's the first time in my life I've written thousands and thousands of words, and to lose that was just, yeah, I probably can't adequately describe it. And it was a very important poem to me. It was a poem about when my brother died. I was 10. And so it was an impactful moment in my life. And it had taken me a long time to find the words to express that, where I wasn't overcome by the event. To tell the story, but in language that kind of put some space between me and the event. And I found a way to do it. And I was so excited. I read it at the first Wordcraft event. And it was such a relief to read. And it was received so beautifully. And Ren would often tell the story about how Wale, one of the ex-Melbourne poets, he's living in Perth now, but he stood up at the end of that event and birthed the Wordcraft regular encore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was there. That was that day. Yeah, so in the back of a furniture factory in restoration business in Fitzroy back in the old days, a whole 3.5 years ago.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of links between the different poetry events that I go to, and then I guess the link is me. So yeah, there's just been an awful lot of grief because Wordcraft itself, the event, is not just what I've lost. It's been more wide-ranging than that. And, some of those things I don't probably want to discuss publicly.
That's fine.
And at the same time, just acknowledging that it's been a very big impact. So, yeah, because I felt like Wordcraft is my poetry home, and I can go to other open mics and be involved with other programs or other people, other MCs. It just doesn't feel the same.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Like you mentioned, I think there is a lot of grief and a lot of hurt. So, again, I'm just reiterating other things that were said, but I just hope that there's some learning from it.
The primary thing that I think is going to get us through is love for each other. So that's certainly my focus and what I really desire coming back to me from the world. So
yeah, amazing. Really well said, Mary. Thank you. I think we're all ready for piece number duo, as the French say.
Piece number duo. So I saved this one just for you, Andrew, because you have not heard it yet.
Oh, so special.
Yeah. I have this kind of categories of poems, I guess, when I look through my backlog, whatever you want to call it, of poems. And this is one that I think of as like an epigenetic poem. You'll hear why in a sec.
Epigenetic as in like passed down through generations?
Yeah, it tells a story of epigenetics in my family. The piece is called Hidden Flags. Where do insults hide when they slide into our bodies? Squirm away from positive charge, their magnetic poles reversed, glowing only in black light, written in invisible ink, not a sweet spy game message exposed with lemon juice or seen like grey moth wings under moonlit softness. Where do insults hide when they pass like a whisper down the line of nurturing heads inclined over cradles and clasping small trusting hands? Do they pull where the skin is thinnest, around the windows to our souls, soak through insulation and spread like mold, resistant to removal? When insults are exposed to the air, do they heal? Our minds tag with glowing flags, memories tied to threads that do not have to be our own, linked by fibres corded within us like the alarms we snooze that never stop waking us, never stop chiming, timepieces set on bombs within. They don't have to be ours to detonate, explode or corrode. Where do they hide? Once, the grandfather I never met told his wife, when she wore a hat she looked like a chicken sticking its head out of a barn. She told me maybe twice. She never felt comfortable wearing hats after that. Where did that sit inside of her? Was it the retelling or the trace in my cells? For I am woven of the same threads, this sharp chin, these big feet, and like her, I have a certain shaped skull enclosing my brain. That cracked, careless comment had circled her crown like a keep off sign, had scrawled in red ink on the pages of the Book of Helen. I saw her doubt. It unfurled in me. I try them and remove them. Still, I'm not sure how I feel about how I look in hats.
Powerful. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. Very, very much enjoyed that, Mary. Very thought-provoking. And yeah, I'm not going to lie, I feel quite special that you left that world premiere for just now. So I hope everyone listening enjoyed that.
Well, some of my Speak Up crew have heard it. I have to say, they are a great audience for constructive feedback.
Beautiful.
Yeah, workshopping a piece with consent, of course.
Do you feel like that one is finished, or is there more work to be done?
Yeah, no, I think that's done.
Oh, agreed. I thought that was very strong all the way through.
When I land the bottom of that, the last line, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's just a feeling sometimes when it's like arriving home again, or, I don't know, landing the plane, or whatever metaphor you want to put to it. Feels good.
Yeah, just walk away and brush the sand off your hands.
That's it. Shake it off your feet. Let us use that piece as a launching point to dive into the creative process, shall we? So, Mary, I am interested in, where you go for your ideas and how you go about disciplining them, shaping them, bringing them into line, letting them run through free, then bringing them into line again, and ending up with your finished pieces. Is it something that you kind of have words or methodology to, or is it more art than science?
Probably I would say it depends. So sometimes I set out to write a poem and I do it using a variety of strategies. Some that other poets have taught me in workshops and so forth. I think that in some respect we're all like a mosaic of the people who have gone before us and the people around us that we're like rubbing shoulders with. And then sometimes my pieces actually arrive more or less in the form that I read them from start to finish. They kind of download themselves. That's what it feels like. It's like there's a poem trying to arrive, and if I get in the way, it won't arrive. Or if I wait too long to write, it will dissipate. often in the shower, I get poems kind of like tapping me on the shoulder, as it were. And I remember one time I was like, oh, I'm in the shower. What can I do? If I get out and get a pen, I'm going to get cold. The water, the page is going to get wet. Like, this is not going to work. And I called my husband and I said, can you write this down for me? And I felt so pompous, Andrew. I've
Write
never
this
done
down, slave.
I was just trying to solve the problem of like what to do. You're in the shower and a poem's arriving.
Yeah. I mean, surely there's a market for this. I look forward to turning on Shark Tank tomorrow night and seeing that someone's made like, you know, a water soluble or rather not water soluble solution that you can have in your shower just doodling around.
So there exist some solutions that are actually like workable.
Okay.
And I have problem solved some of them already. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. I highly recommend bath crayons.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know those were a thing.
They are.
Beautiful.
So I have nannied in my previous iterations as a working human. And yes, I was aware of bath crayons and I was like, there are tiles in my bathroom that would work while I'm in the shower. Yeah, so I highly recommend, at least to like pin images, because I often put images in my poems. They're like quite image rich. And so sometimes pinning an image will help me hold the poem.
Tell me more about bath crayons. Are they going to stain anything? I think I might have to get some for the shower or something.
Well, I did test them first. I guess it depends on your tiles or your glass, whatever.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, I did test them in my shower and I asked the same they're good questions to ask, Andrew.
Because it's not, it can't be just poetry. You know, people talk about shower thoughts all the time. That,
Yes.
you know, quite often, maybe it's because typically we've got a little bit more sensory leeway where, you know, we're not staring at a screen. I mean, sometimes I've stared at screens in showers, but most of the time we've got a little bit more leeway, and sometimes that's where creativity arrives and we go, oh, I've got to do that thing. I just solved all my problems. You know, better write it down. Oh, it's gone.
I don't know, like I didn't know Einstein personally, but I have heard that he said, I do some of my best thinking in the bath.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, well, it checks out to me. It might be one of those, you know, confirmation biases. But yeah, I was like, I can see that. There's a lot of sensory information. Also, like your skin's getting stimulated by the hot water. You're kind of in a free flow state.
You're getting clean, which is just like a nice metaphor in general.
I think it's kind of like driving. A lot of people talk about poetry arriving when they're driving. That rhymes, and I'm not a poet that rhymes, by the way, generally.
Yeah.
If you hear rhyming in my pieces, if it's not an internal rhyme, that's okay. Like an internal rhyme I'll allow. But if the ends of the lines rhyme, I'm probably not okay.
Oh, you don't do it at all? You've never indulged in the old, you know, classical structure there?
No.
Okay. You find it distasteful?
It makes me uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep an ear out for that then, and we'll make sure we check in with you, all right?
I have also a part of me that prevents me from using the same word twice in a poem unless it's intentional.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we have talked about this and how I'm a little bit off that wavelength as well. But I've had guests on here that have encouraged me to not worry about that stuff. I was like, I don't know. I'm running this scorecard in my head sometimes. Stop using the word love. Stop using the word heart.
This part of me just clocks it, and next thing I know, I'm looking up a thesaurus. You know, if I can't solve the problem straight away with a different word that I know means a similar thing, I am looking up a word.
Yeah, I've made a very good use of my thesaurus in the last few weeks, so I'm happy with that. Maybe I need to find like a glow-in-the-dark bath crayon as well that I could use in the float tank if I'm allowed to. That'd be cool.
Well-
Just like chucking stuff up there or whatever.
Yeah, or sometimes I will, if I want to hold an image and I'm not in a place to, like if I'm, for instance, traveling on the bus or something and I'm not in a place to really write, I will pull up a voice memo on my phone and I'll just record the pictures that I can think of that feed into this poem and I'll construct it later.
Oh yeah, just the broad strokes.
Yes, the broad strokes. I find that even just dumping those broad strokes into a fragments file, if I don't know what to do with it, but it kind of occurs to me, I'll put it somewhere and think about it later.
So we've talked about, the glory of getting ideas in the shower and maybe driving. Are there any other contexts that you find are particularly magical, these particular thin spaces where you feel like inspiration is closer than in other parts of the world?
When I'm just waking up. So one of the few poems, see, I'm going to throw a poem in here, but it's so short you won't notice.
That's fine. I'll allow it.
One of the only few poems, a handful of poems that I have memorized is a really short one of mine that I wrote, and it says, "In the crack between, a poem waits."
Sorry, I'm being immature here. That is very good, yeah. The crack
But it was
between
the
what?
crack
Yeah.
between sleeping and waking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that works.
Because when my brain finishes dreaming and before it starts thinking, sometimes poems happen.
Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night with a piece?
No, but I've woken up in the morning with a piece several times.
There you go. Something about those early hours, I guess.
Yeah. And in answer to your question about the thin places, I would say light has a peculiar effect on me. It's like a certain magical light.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm like, I need to express that thing, whatever it is. So I have a lot of poems about clouds and trees catching the light, about sunsets and sunrises, that sort of thing.
I know that you have a knack for sometimes house sitting in very picturesque locations where, you're able to soak up a lot of that light. So, I admire your ability to find the places that kind of give you life and help you find the words, I suppose.
Yeah. And I guess where I house sit regularly with a beautiful view, it's very easy to see how I would be inspired. Like for people to come and visit me there, they look at the vista of the valley and mountains and clouds, and they instantly know that that's inspiring.
Yeah.
And I find inspiration in the crack of a piece of concrete. So, like, I don't need, it's easy, it's amazing when you have those big sweeping, obvious beauties. And sometimes it's the small things that are exquisitely beautiful. And it might be just like a fleeting moment. And so when I notice that sort of thing, I'm like, oh, how to capture that, you know?
Do you think that's a decent episode title? In the crack between, a poet awaits? Poem awaits in a crack between?
It would be funny if a poet was awaiting in the crack. Well, I'm at the moment working on a collection of my pieces that is called Under the Radar.
Yes, Underworld.
Because I feel like in my earlier life, I was flying under the radar a lot. I had this need, this want to be noticed. And also, absolutely, conversely, like, don't notice me. Don't look at me, don't see me. I don't want to be noticed in doing this. So, yeah, when I'm up on stage, I hear those inner voices sometimes, and they're like, a lot of people are looking at you right now. This is maybe not the best plan.
Not the best plan. Bringing you back to, what you discussed towards the start about, before you started sharing your work, feeling like there were things that wanted to be said, but you had a lot of resistance. You had a lot of interior resistance. Do you still face that sometimes? Like, what's your what's your block? Is it cringe? Is it inner critic? Is it fear?
Fear of greatness is a very real thing, Andrew.
Totally.
So I think there's that quote, which I can only paraphrase because my brain works that way. But was it Eleanor Roosevelt who said that we're not afraid that we are powerless, that we're afraid that we're powerful beyond measure?
Okay, hang on. Are you playing the joke on me?
No.
Okay. Do you know who this quote is from?
Who?
Who did you say it was from? You thought it was Eleanor Roosevelt.
Yeah.
It's not. It's someone else called Marianne Williamson.
Oh.
I'm not even joking. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
Powerful beyond measure.
It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. You told me that you wanted to not necessarily be called Mary Williamson because there is a famous writer with the same name. And this is her. So this was not a prank.
No, not a prank.
That is spooky.
So I did tell you that when you Google my name, it is pages of Marianne Williamson quotes.
It really is, including that one. What a
is.
banger.
Yes.
How do you relate to that quote?
So unlike some people, I have come to realize that I actually have a really great relationship with what some people might call their inner critics. That I have a really compassionate and valuable relationship with all the different parts of me. And there are some parts of me that I haven't kind of yet worked with, I guess, because they only really come up in certain situations. But all the ones that come up regularly, I do really well with. So that's been the work of 6 years at least of therapy and internal family systems work, I guess, which you can also Google. Easy. And it's going to be...
Did Marianne Williamson invent that as well?
No. It's going to be the kind of theme of my collection. And I'm going to start that collection with a poem that explains what internal family systems is so that people can read my poetry informed without having to have some sort of dry definition there. So,
can you give us the 2-minute version of what that is and why that's important to you?
Well, the 2-minute version from an IFS definition perspective is probably that we all have more than one mind. We're not just a singular person with a singular mind. We have what they call in internal family systems a multi-mind. And that doesn't mean like the 3 faces of Eve kind of like multiple personality thing. It just means that, as an easy example, when you are lying in bed on the weekend and you're like, you know what? I should really go to the gym. Get out of bed, have a great productive day. And then there's a part of you that's like, let's never leave the bed. Actually, what I would like is someone to bring me breakfast. So those different opposing parts of you that have different agendas are normal. That's what internal family system says. And we have like protective parts that have grown up to take care of us. And they basically tell us to do all sorts of things or not do all sorts of things so that we are safe and so that we basically win at life, and we don't like leave our beds and go to our deaths, you know?
So it's normal to have inner conflict almost.
And the parts of us that are very destabilizing, that bring up big emotions, tend to get pushed down by those protective parts because they're inconvenient. They destabilize us, they threaten us. So big emotions are unpopular. And then there's what is referred to by a lot of different religions, cultures in different ways. And that's like the higher self, the soul, the core self. In IFS, they talk about the core self, but I think it's universally recognized that we kind of have this capacity inside of us that is more than. And so some people have lost their ability to connect to that part of themselves. And their core self is there. It's always there. It's undamaged. But some people can't connect to it. They can't access it. They can't draw from it. So they are caught up in the everyday protectors, the parts of us that are trying to keep us okay. And sometimes they all have different ideas of what that looks like.
Right.
There might be a part of you that says that if you go to the gym and be healthy, that is the answer, right? And another part that's going, actually what you need to do is concentrate on those emails and get your job done, because if the boss is happy, then you're sure to be okay.
And the other one is like, I'm a toasty cinnamon bun. I'm never leaving this bed.
I'm never leaving this bed. Because actually the outside world out there is unpredictable, and it is. And since we can't predict it, let's not do that.
Yeah.
Let's just stay here.
And so the inner critic is just an extension of some of those systems. It sounds like you've got the kind of relationship with your inner critic, if you like. You know, maybe your critic is like David and Margaret at the movies rather than, I don't know, Perez Hilton or no. I can't think of a critic who's like very cutthroat. The chef from Ratatouille. There we go. The critic.
I find that different parts of me use strategies that can be critical. So I'm not sure that I have one inner critic. I think criticism is a strategy which tries to get you to do something or not do something.
Yep. But it's kind of like...
I cut all of my hair off when I turned 50. I took the clippers and I cut it back to like a number 3. I'd been wanting to cut my hair off all of my life. And I walked into the bathroom that morning and I was like, if it's not now, it's never. I just turned 50. I'm going to cut my hair off. And when I cut my hair off, a part of me freaked the heck out.
Yeah.
And started screaming like homophobic slurs at me.
Oh.
To try and get me to like grow my hair back and never do that again. And I've kept it short on purpose because I needed to work through that. There's a part of me that was like, don't step outside this window of tolerance. Like within the window of not too unemotional, but not too emotional, not too like boring, but not too exciting. Like in that window, you're safe. That's what she was saying.
But you
Didn't
found
like that I cut my
you
hair
found
off.
some kind of liberation, outside of the window in that case.
Well, she didn't start yelling at me until I cut my hair off. So then I could work with her.
You've just reminded me of that great line by Maggie Rogers where what did she say? Cut my hair so that I could rock back and forth without thinking of you, or something like that. I don't know what that means, but it just reminded me of that. I mean, I'm a Maggie Rogers simp, so, her lyrics are never far from my mind.
I have one of those minds where when someone says something, I get a song lyric.
Oh, man, I found the best YouTube video about this, which is like, this is what I hear in my head when someone says it's been a while. And I was like,
Yeah.
I think I know what this is. And you know, someone's mum said, oh, it's been a while. And they're trying to listen to the conversation while in their head, it's like, it's been a while since I saw you, like the Stain song or
The
whatever.
one where it's to the left, to the left.
Yeah,
Everything
absolutely.
you want to the left.
I mean, that's my IFS. It's just there's someone who's obsessed with just making it sing-songy and fun. So maybe a bit more of that. I don't know. I'm turning into my dad in that way. Wow, that was wonderful. Thank you for taking us through that. And, you know, I could see that you've definitely done the work in that and seeing that, you know, spill through to your creative work. I want to know more about, like, what's kind of next for you, Mary. You've dropped the bombshell that the collection is on the way.
To a given value of on the way. One of my friends has a poem that says, poets always tell the truth to a given value of the truth.
They tell
like
the
a
truth.
given value of true.
Sorry, I don't quite understand.
I just need to...
Are you saying they tell half-truths?
So how much truth is subjective, right?
A lot, I guess.
Just like X can have any value, for a poet, true could be subjective.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was like, yeah, I like that poem. It says that you should treat poets just like other human beings because stop press, we're all human beings. So, yeah.
Okay, nice. I know that you have a significant gig coming up in Ballarat as well. Can you give us the 411?
I do. I'm not sure when this episode is dropping.
Probably after the gig, but let's hype it up anyway. Let's tell people what they missed.
Well, what they missed was an epic gig in Ballarat
Hell yeah.
and a spring gig because, you know, in Ballarat in winter is a bit challenging. So I definitely will have appreciated a slight increase in temperatures up there. The Ballarat poetry community is incredibly kind and diverse and embracive, I would say. So that's been my experience going up to Ballarat each month for the last several months. And then after the early October gig in Ballarat, my plan is a December gig at Cafe Perc.U.lations
Yay.
in Dandenong. So if you missed Ballarat, you can always catch me there.
Excellent. We'll keep our eyes peeled. And you said in your preparation for Ballarat, you know, you've done something unusual in that you've got your ending sorted and your beginning sorted and you're fleshing out the middle bits. Is that right?
Yes. I often find that my poetry has kind of bookends and it's the messy middle that sometimes needs some work. So, yeah, often it will come a beginning and an end is really easier for me than the middle. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. I'm like, I have in mind a tone that I want for my set and I have like an overarching concept and now I just need to slot all my pieces in there so they support that arc.
So it's a proverbial crack that you're working on with, the ones
It
or whatever.
is.
Yeah, that imagery is going to
is.
stay with me, along with imagery of microphones as well.
Well, I mean, Leonard Cohen did talk about where the light gets in.
Yes.
Yeah.
The crack is where the light gets in. This is very true. It's very true. We're just carrying on the tradition of great thinkers, some of which share your name. So go figure. That is still amazing. I genuinely thought you were stitching me up for a second. Trying to throw me with the Eleanor Roosevelt thing.
No shade.
Very good. If people want to find out more about you, Mary, or see some of your work, or hear about when this December gig is going off, is there anywhere they can head to on the interweebs?
Yeah, they can look at the Melbourne Gig Guide.
Yes.
I don't have like an Instagram for my poetry yet. That's sort of down the track. I've really been putting some energy towards meeting up with other poets so that we can work on our collections together, because I find that with ADHD, what they call body doubling, which you can also Google, is helpful. So working alongside someone else who's working on their stuff. And so that's where my focus has been. Yes, a poet hangout together, and then Instagram branding, all that stuff has been pushed to the back of my mind or somewhere else. I don't know, in a proverbial crack somewhere. Yeah, so the gig guide, Facebook events, you'll see me pop up here and there. And then it's just go to the open mics. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Just go. I mean, it'll be Russian roulette. I might be there. So
you'll never know if you never go. And I do have a link to, Melbourne poetry at the end of each episode description, which is often the most up-to-date gig guide, I'd say, for events happening around Melbourne. So check it out. Yeah. Mary, I'm so glad that we have been able to immortalize this time in the airwaves finally, after so much challenge and so much exasperation and so much embarrassment and apologizing on my part. But before we say goodbye, you've got one more piece to share with us.
Yes, I do. This is a piece that I wrote for the Dirty 30, which was a poetry month tradition and has been taken on by Prompted Prose on Facebook. But for years, the Dirty 30 was hosted every April, and there were prompts every day, and except Friday. And Friday was a free write day, and I wrote this poem on a Friday for the Dirty 30 a couple of years ago, and it's called Beats. There's a building rhythm as my feet tread the asphalt, umbrella tapping, hips swaying, the rain-washed sun shining warm on the back of my neck. The sky beams blue and my body sings with internal beats. Smile at swallows weaving in skillful acrobatics, creating layers of melody and harmony against the clouds, composing a eucalyptus breeze trance. I dance a few steps between rows of parked cars, a medley of my morning in the festival of my soul.
Gorgeous. Well, I'll tell you what, one day, Mary, someone's going to be Googling quotes from Marianne Williamson and being like, who's this chick? Why did she take the place of the great Australian slam poet? It's going to be...
Well, I have a branding that I think maybe I will use some variation of once I actually put together an Instagram page for my poetry, and it's some variation of words for me. Yeah, I really connect with that. I've tried different iterations of my name, different nicknames that people have used for me, and nothing kind of feels right. Yeah, it's that embracing of poetry is, the words for me.
Lovely. Well, whatever it ends up being, you'll be Mary Williamson to us. And thank you so much for joining us on the show.
It's been a privilege. Thank you, Andrew.
Patience of a saint.
Weetabix hands, what's that all about?